My name is Isla. I am 54 years old. I lived most of my life in North Carolina, specifically Chapel Hill, but now I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I have a background in the medical field. I've worked as a referral coordinator, optometric assistant. I've done some caretaking roles, and I did a documentary myself. So that was something that I did. That was kind of just a wish list for me. So I accomplished that. And yeah, I am postmenopausal. I started menopause when I turned 52. That was in 2023. I was postmenopausal, I guess, a year later. Yeah, 2024, December. So right now I'm, yeah, about a year postmenopausal. I first started noticing symptoms kind of like in my mid 40s. Um, I had gotten a frozen shoulder when I turned 46, actually. And I went to a doctor and I asked, I was like, is this common? I've never heard of this. I've just started hearing people talk about frozen shoulder and I have one. And he said, well, yeah, it's women in their 40s, 50s, and 60s tend to get frozen shoulder. We don't know why exactly. It could be metabolic changes. No relationship to perimenopause mentioned or yeah, brought to my attention. So I was just like, okay, well, I guess that's just part of being a woman is to have a frozen shoulder. So I had that for a year and a half. And then of course, like when I turned closer to 48, I noticed my periods started to, fluctuate in terms of their length and the spacing out of time of having them. So I had that going on. And then, I guess when I turned 50, I noticed my sleep change. I used to get up at 4 in the morning and I didn't understand why I was getting up so early. So I would get up, make myself a cup of coffee, and then a couple hours later I'd take another nap. So my sleep started to change. And then I guess as I slowly inched towards 51, things started to get worse. When I turned 51, I noticed that there were these odd symptoms. Like I saw like halos of light in my peripheral vision, and having come from an eye care background, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm having a retinal detachment because, I had all the symptoms of that. It was like floaters and circles of light. And so I went to an ophthalmologist. They did a thorough examination. They said, no, there's no sign of retinal detachment. I mean, they did the works. I mean, photographs, retinal photographs and a scleral test to see all the corners of the retina, and there was nothing wrong. And it's like, what is going on with me? And then I noticed like I just started to feel anxious and more pressure and more heart related symptoms like palpitations and just anxiety. I had like this pulsating sound in my head, and that was just like like this whooshing sound. So I went to urgent care. They checked my blood pressure and it was sky high. And I've always had low blood pressure. I'm like 100/60 my entire, adult life. So it was probably like 160/110, which was unheard of for me. I had the physician assistant hold my hand. I said, I can't, you've got to be with me. I was crying. I was sobbing. Um, I was like, you guys got to help me. Oh, and then the other thing I said, you know, I was having insomnia, and she said, well, we can give you Ambien. Um, I said, okay, I'll take it. And I didn't like that idea because I'm so sensitive to medication. So I took like a little chip off of the Ambien. It did help, but it made me feel groggy and horrible the next day. And I didn't like that. So there was sort of the little things that were creeping in to you know, my being, like that were affecting me. Around that time, I also had a dream. I dream a lot. I'm a big dreamer, and I wouldn't say I have prophetic dreams, but some may say that I do, but they're pretty significant. And I had this dream one night that I was at a traffic light, and stoplight, and then there was this big red truck, like 18-wheeler truck, turning and going to be turning this way, where in front of me, and it just fell on top of me. And I remember looking up and saying, I'm gonna die. This is it. I'm done. And I woke up and I really thought that this was like a premonition that I was gonna die. And one night I ate something, I ate salmon with garlic on it. I used to put tons of garlic on salmon. And that night I woke up at 2 in the morning and I had palpitations like, I don't know how fast it was going, but I thought it was an emergency. And I was going to call 911. I didn't know what was going on. And so I was like, just calm down, calm down. This is going to be okay. It went away. And then it came back another time when when I ate salmon with garlic 2 weeks later, same exact thing. So then I thought, well, am I eating too much salt? I didn't know what it was. Was it the salmon? Was it the garlic? Was it too much salt? So I started reducing my salt intake. I didn't know what was going on with me. And then I couldn't sleep. It was like terrible, like insomnia. Like I could not, I was like, I was wide awake at 3 in the morning, just not even sleepy at all. And my heart palpitations became outrageous, just booming, palpitations and hot flashes at 2 in the morning. I'd wake up at like 2 and then I would get cold sweats. And I was dog sitting for a friend during the time. The dog was just like, what's going on with her? Cause would get a cold pack to put on my head. And then I'd get in the warm bath to try to like warm up because anyway, it was a crazy time. And so that was, I think, when it really hit, menopause really, really hit me then. And then from there, it was just downhill. I contacted a doctor that I used to work for who was a gynecologist, and she specialized in these issues, fibroids, menopause, PMS. And I worked as her referral coordinator, so I would refer women for their mammograms or their pelvic floor physical therapy or whatever, but I didn't have direct patient contact. So I didn't feel the impact or understand what these women were actually going through. I was just referring them out for, other doctor visits. So, and the other thing she did was she sold supplements, like magnesium, L-theanine, hair, skin, and nails, all these things that were meant for those symptoms. And at first when I worked there, I did a little bit of front desk work and I would, sell supplements or, be a cashier or whatever. And I would think, is this really real? Like they really need all these things? Like this can't be real. You can't really have all these insomnia and this and that and anxiety. I'm like, but then when it hit me, I remembered what those women were talking about at the checkout line. And I was like, this is what I need to contact my old doctor. And, she asked me all the questions about my period, how long I haven't had one, etc. And then she recommended magnesium and estrogen first to try. And then if that didn't work, to go with bioidentical hormones, which I believe for me is the best option. And then I had another friend, and she's a supplement queen, my friend. And she's like, no supplement's going to work. Hormones is the only thing that's going to make this better. So I said, if she says that, then it must be, I'm going for it. Because I had some reservations about it. Well, I'm just an extremely sensitive person. Like, I have to start really slow with even vitamins, any medication, any food. I have a strong reaction to things. And I was sort of hesitant on that end. And then, you hear about how estrogen is connected to breast cancer, that there increases the chances of you getting breast cancer. That kind of concerned me. And just the unknown. I didn't really talk to people or a lot of women about it. So it's just the unknown scared me, and just trying anything new. She knew how sensitive I was. And so she initially recommended the magnesium, which kind of is a relaxant, it relaxes your muscles, and your body doesn't absorb as much magnesium when you get older. And then the estrogen, which was for like a substitute for estrogen. So the magnesium was kind of a substitute for progesterone. She wanted me to start on that. And so I did. And it helps. I have to take magnesium, and actually calcium magnesium. But the hormones, once I started those, that's when I really noticed the shift in how I was feeling. It took a while to get to the right dosage, and it took a while to figure out what times were best to take them. I mean, it was a process, and I kept a journal of, how I was feeling or reacting each day, to the changes. And I have to say that the anxiety continued for a while I was on the hormones, because I wasn't taking the progesterone at the right time. I learned through just experience that you should take it 3 hours before you're ready to go to bed. And so what I had been doing is, and it's supposed to help with sleep. That's the sleep hormone. So I was taking it kind of like if I woke up in the middle of the night, I would put like a little dot on my wrist, but the next morning I'd have crippling anxiety like all day until about 4 o'clock. And that was a big thing for a while. And then I learned to take it 3 hours before bedtime and not after. And then the anxiety went away. I felt much, much better. And it was life changing, but it took a good year and a half to really get back to a place where I felt somewhat normal. I tend to get signs from the universe. That's a whole nother topic as well. But when I first started having the serious symptom of anxiety, palpitations, and not sleeping that first night that I ate the salmon, I did get a sign. And it usually comes, sometimes it comes on a license plate. Um, but it said Dr. E on it. And I said, Dr. E, that's what we called our doctor. And I was like, the first day of my symptoms, I should have just called her right away. And I hesitated for so long to call. So like, oh, it can't be that. Oh, what? She can't help me. This is not about that. This is. And if I had just trusted my guide and my intuition and called her, I could have probably mitigated some of those more serious symptoms. I didn't make the connection, or I didn't believe that it was so serious. Like, could menopause be that bad for some women? Because some people would come in and it's like, "Oh, I just need my magnesium. I need my cortisol calm. I need my this or that." I'm like, "Okay." But I didn't really think that it was so critical to have these supplements or have these special therapies or whatever until it hit me. And then when I entered menopause, I thought back to that time that I worked for her and I said, "Whoa, okay, this is serious. I really do need this help." And I felt lucky, actually. I felt it was providential that I actually worked for her because I don't think I would have been aware of those options had I not worked for her. In the beginning, I felt quite isolated, quite misunderstood because my symptoms were just so bizarre. I was questioning my reality. I was questioning honestly who I was. Like, are you crazy? Like, get a grip, girl. Um, Looking at myself in the mirror is like, what is wrong with you? Like, just stop. Because I didn't know who to tell because I did feel like people didn't understand. So I felt very isolated in my understanding of what was happening, and I thought I was going crazy. And I even considered maybe I was having a nervous breakdown and maybe I needed to go to the hospital. Before this, we never talked about it. It was only until I started expressing my heart palpitations that she was like, I had that. Maybe you're going through menopause. Maybe that she didn't really know either. But I don't think like her case was as extreme as mine, but she did remember having the heart palpitations and calling for an ambulance at work. So when I said that, she made the connection and I said, well, maybe that is what I'm going through. So she just kind of suffered through it. I don't think her case was as bad as mine though, because I really had mental health challenges during menopause that were extreme. The anxiety and the depression were like I've never experienced before. And I've had depression my whole life. I've taken an antidepressant since I was 23. But this was very much more intense than anything I had experienced before. And I've been through divorce, I've been through job changes, I've been through a lot of things, but this took the cake in terms of traumatic experiences. And I'm just going to go ahead and say it was traumatic. I do not feel like the same person I was pre-menopausal to post-menopausal. It's like a new person was born. It was almost like a pre-death experience, or like an old self had died and a new person was becoming, but I didn't understand who this person was. I mean, my hair changed. My hair used to be so thick I couldn't wear it long. I had to wear it short. It was so thick. I would have to thin it with shears. Now it's so thin and I can grow it out and I'm loving it. So that's a plus. But it was just like all these changes, like even my face narrowed. Like it went to a prepubescent like frame almost because it was more full. It had more full collagen, or full bone structure was different, like slightly different. My hips narrowed. So I was just morphing into this person, and it affected me spiritually. It affected my belief system. I used to have such faith, such trust, such certitude in the process and the universe that it was guiding me all the time. There was beauty everywhere, that the universe was friendly, that everything that happened was for a reason. So when menopause hit and all hell broke loose, I started to question everything that I had held to be true. Like things aren't that beautiful, or maybe things aren't. I didn't feel safe. I felt vulnerable. I felt like, is God with me? Am I safe? Did I do something wrong? Um, I questioned my thoughts. My thoughts were like, negative thinking, negative feedback, thinking that people were thinking things about me that they weren't even, probably weren't. I was questioning my existence. I was questioning whether God loved me anymore, whether there was a God. And I've been a very, very faith based person my whole entire life, very, very trusting in, a higher power. And I was like, is there really a higher power? Am I going to be okay? So yeah, I felt a certain a certitude about my existence before. Like I had a place in the world, um, that everything was fine. I would always Things would always be okay. And then when menopause hit, it's like a shield or something got stripped away. Some kind of protective armor just went away, and I felt raw. There was a rawness, a raw feeling, and extreme vulnerability. Um, I think I even had some obsessive thinking, like obsessive thoughts, repetitive, intrusive thoughts. I cared more actually about what people thought. Before I was like, I don't care what anybody thinks. I'm going to do what I want to do. And I felt more sensitive to what people were thinking about me, or how I was being portrayed, or how I was being thought of, or it was to me, I almost had an opposite from experience than most people go through. Like I lost weight. I feel like it wasn't a typical experience. I actually became more sensitive, more, I didn't have this like, I don't care about the world. I'm going to do what I want to do. I did not have that feeling at all. I felt very like cautious, and it shook my foundation, my spiritual foundation, until I made the connection that this is not spirit. My problem is not spiritual. My spirit is separate from my body. My spirituality is okay. This is a biological mental problem. Treat that, and you will feel better, and your spirituality will return to what it was. And I'm starting to feel that now. I'm starting to feel a return to that that trust and confidence and faith in a higher power, in the universe and God. I'm still figuring out like who I am. I'm still trying to define my role in the world. Like, when you turn 55, it's kind of like you have an awakening, like that, or a realization that, you don't have that many years left. I probably have maybe 20 good years, maybe 30 years good, good years left. So what am I going to do with that time? So that shifted for me, as well as my parents aging. That's been affecting me, thinking of their death, and they're in their 80s now. Um, so it's just a life change. It's just a complete change. I had always worked full time since I was 18. I've always had a full time job, and was full of vigor and enthusiasm. Never hardly missed work. But when menopause hit, I had started this job as a case manager, and I was doing a great job at first. It was, and they were very, very understanding. I mean, because I was doing such a good job, they were patient with me, luckily. But it was the first time in my life where I could not work. I literally, and I was like, there's got to be, you know, concessions made for women that are going through this. And so I looked into disability. I signed up for disability, but it didn't qualify for menopause. It wasn't recognized as a disability. And I don't think it's a disability, but it is a time where you need to readjust, and women need to readjust and need to be allowed, just like pregnancy. You're off for 3 months when you're pregnant. Well, there needs to be some time to figure out what's going on with us as we approach the menopause age. So there wasn't a lot of education or options for me. So I think now, because a lot of the stars are coming out and talking about it, and legislation's changing, and workplace workplace employers are providing more options for like time off, or you know having a room where you can rest, or meditate, or stuff like that. But at the time that I was going through it, there wasn't an option. It was very confirming for me when I started hearing these stars like Halle Berry and Drew Barrymore and Oprah. Out of nowhere, it seemed as like all of a sudden menopause became a thing, or a thing, that topic that people felt safe to talk about right as I was going through it. So it was very confirming for me and affirming. I loved it that it was coming out like this. And it was very, and yeah, so I was thinking, why did it happen as I was going through it? Why before it didn't happen, why didn't it happen before? And I realized that our generation wants answers. Prior generations probably were just like, "Oh, well, it's just something you go through, you stay quiet about it, and don't make a big fuss." But we want answers, we want to know what's going on. And so it was wonderful to feel that support. I would like it to be normalized, that menopause is not something to shun or hide or be ashamed of. This is a normal process, and it doesn't mean you're sick, it doesn't mean you're ill. It's just a time of transition, and it needs to be normalized. It needs to be talked about in TV programs and TV shows and movies, and not be shamed. Um, awareness of this time, education prior to that time, maybe education, some kind of, I don't know when you would talk about it. I guess, would you talk about it when you're in high school, or they give education and about puberty. So why not warn about the long term. I don't know, it's a tricky thing. So, but just to, and also for workplaces to have concessions for this time period, at least 3 months to figure it out, and just time off. Just time off for 3 months to make it a disability, a temporary, a short-term disability, just like pregnancy, you're out for 3 months. Same thing for menopause, it should be there. I believe that firmly. Well, I don't wanna scare young women. I want them to enjoy their youth, and I want them to not, be terrified by it, but just to be aware, and to know that there are options, for treatment. There are alternative options that, don't give up the search, and do what works for you, and ask questions, do research. And I think by the time that most young women get to that point, at this point, there's gonna be so much more knowledge and awareness, and they probably won't have as hard a time. But yeah, just to believe that there's hope, and to keep searching for solutions. Don't give up. Don't think you're crazy. If something's wrong, trust that gut feeling that something's wrong and it can be fixed. There's always a solution. No more periods, no more mood swings as far as the PMS, PMDD. Um, the long hair, I'm loving my long hair. Everyone's complimenting me on it. I used to never have it long. I've enjoyed losing weight. I feel like I look the best I've ever looked in my life. And I look good before, but I feel like this is like my prime, actually. And that's another thing to get used to. I'm like, whoa, who is that? Who is that lady? You're awakening to a new self. And I think, we go through these stages. You're a baby, you don't speak, you don't remember anything. Then you get teeth, and then you have to learn to walk. And then puberty hits, and then those changes happen. And then, you go through adulthood, and menopause is just another one of those major transitions. And I think death is also going to be that way. I know that's a different topic, but I think death will be a similar transition. And this is kind of like a prelude, or like a preview of what that might be like. It's like, this is your chance to like do what you got to do for the rest of your life before that hits.